some of us, many of us, and very much so recently, have been hit by some really turbulent and excruciating circumstances in life where really we're about to give up and we don't know what to do, we don't know where to go. How during such times do you beat the toughest of odds and still come out stronger? Ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about resilience and courage. Greetings, namaste, and welcome to another beautiful episode of Humans on Happiness, where we catch up with the likes of you, myself, and our beautiful guest of today, and understand their hacks on how they lead a consciously happier life. The episode today is a must and most vital trait that all of us need to have today. That's why we've got an expert who's not only just led her life but trains and leads by example on the topic of resilience. They say a phoenix rises through the ashes and soars to the sky. However, have you asked yourself, is that just an analogy or is that really possible? And in this episode, we're going to catch up with a Wonder Woman, like I said, who's made resilience her mantra of her life. And I've known her personally. We work together, and for the years we worked together, I've always been inspired by how strong she is and how she's turned her life around to not only just fix herself but evolved to help others in developing the skill and trait of resilience. Not just that, she's a life coach. I don't know if I'm supposed to put this, I'll remove it, but she's writing her book. She runs a podcast called The Resilience Movement, something you definitely should check out. And today she's here to talk about resilience. So welcome, Donna.
Thank you. It's great to be here, and thank you for inviting me, and I hope that you get a lot of value from this discussion.
Absolutely. And like I always say, you do have a choice of sharing that little piece of news or some fancy quote on your social media, or you have a choice of sharing this podcast to one person who you think may find a difference. And yes, so please share it. To start off with, like we always do, Donna, give us the down low of your life in a 60-second reel.
Goodness, 60-second reel. I am a mother of 4, a nana of 9 beautiful little souls. I'm a hard-working person who loves to contribute to other people's lives, and I feel like I've been gifted with some skills that really help me do that. So how's that for 60 seconds?
Spot on. I wish I had a timer, but I'm sure you made it. You talked about resilience as a skill. Before we get to that, what is resilience?
Resilience is in my opinion, is the ability to bounce back from adversity, because you have developed a muscle that, a reminder of, it won't always be like this. This too shall pass. And so it's something that you need to continuously work on. It's not something that is just there. In fact, I didn't really understand resilience until I had a lot of reflection. And I will just digress into, my book is called Resilience Beyond Contemplation. And that is because we are resilient beyond what we could possibly contemplate. And that gets tested throughout our lives in different ways. So
my next obvious question is resilience something that people can have as a natural trait, or is it something that has to be trained and worked upon, like the way you mentioned?
Well, I think that comes down to on an individual basis. So there are individuals who go through such adversity and trauma, and they may have to work a little bit harder than people who may not have gone through as much trauma. And there are people who will bounce back in a different way. We all go through grief in a different way, but how we become after the trauma or after the challenge, we can become the most pessimistic person. Why does this always happen to me? Or we can realize that this is part of my journey and I need to be able to grow from this. So it is a work in progress, a constant work in progress. And if you don't do the work, it can overwhelm you, and therefore you're not being as resilient as if you do the work.
So it's one of those skills that you may not find the need of it immediately, or like the way you put it, that maybe what you're going through is not something like what you'd define as tough. However, it's something that you'd want to have in your kitty or in your bag, and it could be used because it could be useful anytime, anywhere.
Well, if you just look at the last 2 years, right, we have gone through as a country, as the whole world, right?
Yes.
We've all gone through different times. Now you look at how some people have coped, some people have not coped, but we've all had different circumstances. So how someone copes being alone and isolated could be very different from how their neighbour copes with being alone and very isolated. And so what you see as a hardship, that doesn't define my happiness, because it's something that I just need to deal with. There have been other people that have been quite clearly devastated by what has occurred over the last year. We all have different levels of the way in which we respond to situations and cope with situations. And the more resilient you are, the more you're going to bounce back from something and not feel like it's all doom and gloom.
I agree. In fact, I'm glad you put it that way. So kind of putting it in a nutshell, it's about gaining those coping skills. And in today's VUCA world, where things are so unseen, unplanned, unforeseen, I think it's an absolute vital must to have that in your kitty to cope.
Yes.
To put it very, very simply. So what has been your experience and journey with resilience?
Well, it's an ongoing journey, but my experience has been to really be able to become more resilient, especially in times where I was going through very difficult times with going through a divorce and also raising children and being able to function. Like there were times where there was a few specific traumatic events in my life where I wasn't functioning. And the bottom line is, if I fell apart, how was anything going to continue? How were my children going to be supported? How was I going to continue to run my business? Because I was a business owner at the time with this specific event. And it's like I had to do something. And the only way I was going to come out of it was to learn new strategies to cope and then to thrive. So I got to a point where I didn't just want to survive, I wanted to thrive.
Is it then possible that when putting it in those terms, when shit hits the fan, it is actually possible to thrive?
I think it is possible to thrive when shit hits the fan, but you have to have some strategies in place to be able to do that. Let me give you a really good example of that. When shit hits the fan and you want to have a few wines to forget about the world or forget about what's happening, that may not help you the next day.
Because the shit is still above in the fan. So talking about strategies, talk to us about 2 pieces of advice. One for someone who's gone through some real drama and trauma in their life. So the first piece of advice is to them as to what are the starting steps and building blocks of the journey of resilience, number 1. And number 2 is someone who's having an easy life but have realized that no, this is something that I should start building. I should train myself to be more resilient or be able to cope. So what would be your advice to these 2 people?
So let me start with the second person, because the second,
easier one.
Well, not so much the easier one, but the second one is the person who just flows along in life.
Yes.
Everything flows beautifully and everything, but they're not growing, right?
Right.
They're just, life's easy, and why would we want to change it up?
Exactly.
Right? And if we want to do something out of our comfort zone, we need to have that resilience, because we start letting fear creep in. Oh no, I can't do that. And the fear is false evidence appearing real. And it's the story we tell ourselves that creates the fear. The more we tell the story, the more the fear grows, right? So first of all, that's that person. And to start getting out of your comfort zone, start writing down what the fear is. What are the things that are stopping you from doing those extra things? Now, the other thing is, let's go back to the other person. Life is really hard. There's challenges happening. There's a divorce happening, or there's something going on with kids. You have these things. One of the best strategies is you've got to get the shit out of your head, right? So you've got to be able to dump what's going on in here. And one of the best ways to do that is to write it down, journal it. Because when you can get it out of the system, you can write it down, it becomes more rational. Whereas running it around in your head can become very irrational.
True.
Talk to a trusted person, and they're not the people who are just going to tell you what you want to hear. They're the people who are going to tell you what you need to hear, and not necessarily solve your problems for you, but give you some guidance around how you can start to solve your own problems. Because we become more resilient by relying less on people. And you know, part of my resilience is there is always a way. Right? There is always a way to overcome. There is always a way to do something differently. And you couldn't give me a scenario where I couldn't find another way, because that's just how I think. But I had to teach myself to think like that.
How can one get into such a mindset that you talk about?
So this is really powerful in the sense of asking yourself questions. When you start to ask yourself questions, now that is, what if? What if I didn't feel like this anymore? How would I want to feel? What if? What do I want to feel like? Because I have a choice, right? You know, so if you start to have these conversations with yourself and you hold yourself accountable for your own behavior, that's a really big cataclysmic change. That's such a massive change of, what if instead of why me? Why is this happening to me? Woe is me. Now, I'm not saying that things that we go through aren't hard, but if we stay in victim, if we stay there for too long, then we lose the ability to take control of our own life and to choose.
And I love the way you put it that way, the last part, that if you continue being or portraying yourself to yourself as the victim, you become the frog in the boiling water. You will not realize when that cold water turns boiling and kind of engulfs you and kills you. So you better kind of jump out as soon as you can. So she's given us our 2 or 3 hashtags for this conversation. It's hashtag what if, hashtag not survive, hashtag thrive. And one thing I'd like to add is hashtag why me not. Thank you for that. So how, looking at the world today, what do you think is the biggest challenges that people are faced with around us today?
I think that people forget that they have a choice as to what they listen to. I think that people forget that you have a choice as to who you spend time with. I don't have to spend time with those people because they actually don't align with my values. So I'm not going to go camping with these people, or I'm not going to have dinner with these people. I'm going to go. So you have to become really strong in your mindset. And all of this is how you're building up your resilience.
What are some of the challenges that one could face in this journey of resilience?
I think some of the things we face is when we have people close to us and we want to specifically change, people don't necessarily like the change, and that's partially fear. In fact, you'd find that it's nearly always fear. That person is afraid, why are you changing? I don't want you to change. I like you where you are.
You can obviously understand and start your journey over here, But the important thing is to start that journey and make that decision that you want to start this journey. And like you said at the very start, it's not a must that you need to have gone through a tough time to build this resilience. It is a skill and a trait that all of us, absolutely all of us, need to have. And with that, Donna, that does bring us to the final and the most exciting segment of the show, the Quick Fire 5, where I'm going to ask you 5 questions in a rapid fire format, and the recommendation is for you to try and answer it with a word or a sentence at most.
A short sentence.
Yes, a very short sentence.
I'm not good at that. Okay.
So are you ready for Quick Fire 5?
Ready, set, go.
Fantastic. So Donna's legacy in 3 words.
That I cared courageously for those that I love and those that I could touch in life.
If you could be stuck on an island with one person of your choice, who would you want that person to be?
Richard Branson, because I think he would be fun.
Beautiful. He's not bringing any of his planes, I tell you that,
No,
or his
no.
new rockets, I tell you that. It's just going to be Richard Branson, the man himself. Right. If you could invite to dinner a person dead or alive, anyone in the world, who would you like to have over for dinner? What would you cook for them? And what would you want to talk to them about?
Jim Rohn, I would cook for him a traditional roast, and I would want to talk to him about his philosophy of life.
Right. Between courage, resilience, and kindness, a skill most vital for every person to have. I'll repeat. Courage.
Between all 3? Do you have to pick one of those 3?
You have to pick one.
Kindness.
Beautiful. And final question, what is the one piece of advice you would like to give to the youngsters of today?
The one piece of advice for young people is to learn how to be brave in life and go after your dreams.
Wonderful. Right, Donna, you have been wonderful. I wish I had a hamper to give you for doing so well. Thank you once again, Donna. Any final words for our viewers?
Thank you for actually listening, and I hope that you've been able to take one piece of information and implement that into your life. I really appreciate being invited on, and I love the culture of happiness. I think everybody should find happiness in the little things before you have to try and find things that are big.
I couldn't have ended it any better. Thank you, Donna. Thank you for being here, sharing your wisdom with us. And for the rest of you, keep it happy, keep it smiling, and share and spread the culture of happiness. Thank you.
Thank you.